Hey guys. Tonight, we journey into the smoky camps and blood-slick fields of the Mongol Empire, where stepping out of line didn't just earn you a slap on the wrist. It might get your ribs turned into soup stock. Picture this. A lonely wind howls over the plains. Banners flutter like nervous eyelash. And in the middle of a wide leather tent, a man kneels in chains before a circle of warriors, his fate up to the whims of Mongol justice, which is about as cozy as sleeping in a cactus bush. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, drop your location and what time it is where you are. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge behind a row of captured soldiers, your wrists raw from the rope binding them. The smell of horse sweat, blood, and the sweetly sour stench of fermented mare's milk wafts on the breeze. Ahead of you, rising like a mirage on the vast steppe, is the main Mongol encampment. Dozens of yurts form a loose circle, but the largest one, Ager, painted with symbols of war, dominates the center. That's where they decide who lives, who dies, and who gets something. Worse, you already know this isn't going to be a polite trial with powdered wigs and tearful juries. Mongol justice is swift, inventive, and deeply uninterested in mercy. You're ushered inside the tent, where the heat from a central fire bakes the air like a meat oven. Warriors lounge with blades laid across their laps. A shaman mutters to himself in the corner, throwing bones into a dish and nodding as if the femur just said, "Off with his head." And then comes the booming voice of the executioner, not a masked man, but a broad-shouldered brute in furs, his cheeks scarred by past battles and maybe past punishments. He doesn't ask what you did. He asks if you're ready to pay. That's it. No appeals. No advocates. Just the Mongol version of Yelp. And everyone's getting 1 star. Here's a curious fact to lull you to sleep. Mongol punishment wasn't always chaotic. Genghis Khan's legal code, the Yasa, actually tried to regulate how justice was carried out. The idea was to keep people afraid. Sure, but also to stop senseless cruelty from becoming, well, too creative. Irony alert. It didn't work. Historians still argue whether the Yasa was strictly followed or mostly symbolic, because the punishments dished out in practice often ignored the rules entirely. Like right now, as one prisoner is brought forward, a tax collector who skimmed a little off the top, you expect a quick beheading. But instead, the guards lay him down and toss an embroidered silk cloth over his face. Then, 2 massive rugs. What follows is both silent and sickening. Several guards kneel down on top of the layered textiles. They don't move. They just sit. Minute pass. The only sound is a quiet exhale. A long wheeze. And then, nothing. You've just witnessed the infamous Mongol death by carpet, a method reserved for noble blood or foreign diplomats who needed to die without spilling a single drop. Why? Because bloodshed on royal soil was forbidden in Mongol tradition. So instead of decapitating a prince and dirtying the floor, they smothered him with style. Even their executions had etiquette. You get shuffled aside. Lucky for now, the next man isn't. He's a deserter. And while his crime is clear, the punishment menu seems to change based on mood. This time, the Khan chooses something that sounds like poetry, but smells like doom. Let the horses pass judgment. Now, you get to watch. The condemned is tied down in a shallow pit just wide enough for 2 horses to trot across. A ring of spectators gathers, all too eager. The executioner snaps his fingers, and the horses are released. They gallop straight over the man's body. Once, twice, 10 times, until bone crunching becomes the percussion of the evening. Strangely, the horses don't seem disturbed. They've done this before. Maybe they're on retainer. Another day. Another grim trivia fact. The Mongols preferred methods that left the body intact when it mattered, especially for enemies of high status. Corpses were symbolic. Mangled bodies could offend the spirits or send the wrong diplomatic message. But when it was time to send a message of fear, all bets were off. As the crowd disperses, you find yourself beside a boy, no older than 12, dressed in layered robes and holding a bronze bowl. Inside is a paste made of crushed herbs and dried blood. When asked what it's for, the boy shrugs. Face paint for ghosts. He says, either he's lying, or that's the most hardcore cosmetic line in history. You can't sleep. Not with the wails that echo from the tent. But you try. You curl into your furs. Your eyes heavy. Your heart heavier. Mongol night winds screech across the plain, like wolves looking for a bone. Punishments may end with death, but fear lingers longer. And here in the Empire of Khans, that fear is the real ruler. The next morning, the man beside you is gone. Just gone. No blood. No noisy. You hear whispers sent to the bone stacker. You don't ask questions. Some punishments are too strange, even to speak aloud. But that's just the beginning. You've seen a glimpse of the execution tent. Tomorrow, you'll learn why silver isn't just for coins, and why one Mongol general became the human equivalent of a melted candlestick. You wake up to the unmistakable sound of sizzling. Not breakfast. Not even someone unlucky enough to fall into the cooking pot. It's something more. Metallic. Something that crackles like fire licking metal. You sit up. Your limbs stiff from sleeping on a bedroll made of woven goat hair and existential dread. Around the fire, the same warriors from last night are sharpening blades, brushing their horses, and laughing like nothing happened. But across the camp, under a separate canopy, something else entirely is unfolding, a punishment no one wants to see, but everyone watches. They drag the victim out, a high-ranking official from a conquered city, still dressed in soot-stained silk. His face is calm in that defeated way only nobles wear, like he knows what's coming and no longer cares. They sit him down on a low wooden throne, tie his arms behind him, and wedge his knees apart with iron pins. A large iron bowl, filled with what looks like molten silver, is brought in on a cart, wobbling and sloshing with each step. You blink. Unsure. Surely not. Surely this is ceremonial. Or art. Then comes the moment one of the guards steps forward, grips the man's head, and tilts it back. Another takes a small ladle and dips it into the shimmering liquid. He raises it. Pour. And just like that, the silver is funneled directly into the noble's eyes and ears. A hiss rising like steam from a forgotten kettle. He doesn't even scream, just shudders once. Like a puppet with its strings suddenly cut, you stare in silence. The Mongols, being highly pragmatic, reserved this punishment for those they viewed as treacherous leaders, particularly those who betrayed alliances or cities that surrendered only to rise up again. The melted silver represented wealth, corruption, and poetic irony, all in one scalding package. A common belief held that this method preserved the outer body while destroying the senses, a symbolic punishment for those who were blind and deaf to loyalty. Historians still argue whether molten silver was actually used, or whether this account was exaggerated by European chroniclers who loved a dramatic death story. Some scholars insist it would be impossible to survive even a few seconds without massive tissue vaporization, so maybe the tale was metaphorical. However, I just watched it. So metaphor or not, your brain files it under unseeable. And then, casually, the guards go back to eating. One of them, gnawing on a mutton rib, grins in your direction. Better than boiling, he says in broken Turkic. Cleaner. Your stomach flips. But not from fear. Well, okay. Maybe from fear, but mostly from the sheer efficiency. Mongol justice is like a machine. Fast, symbolic, terrifying, and customized. Like a medieval punishment vending machine. Later that day, you're assigned to help carry supplies to a nearby hill fort that was recently pacified. That's Mongol, for everyone inside is now decorating the place as skeletons. You walk past charred gates, past a makeshift platform built from the disassembled carts of the executed. A girl, probably 10 points at the blood-soaked planks, and whispers. That's where they cracked the taxman's back. You freeze. Cracked, she nods. With other bones. Turns out, there was a particularly grim method the Mongols used on repeat offenders and looters, stacking them atop sharpened bones, sometimes even the bones of previous criminals. The condemned would be forced to kneel on these spikes, their spines arched unnaturally. Then, gradually, weights were added to their shoulders, as stones, logs, occasionally, sacks of coins to drive the metaphor home. The end. A sickening series of pops and gasps as vertebrae gave way one by one. The practice, known in oral step tales as bone folding, was rarely written down, but Mongol prisoners whispered about it for generations. The method emphasized two things: weight, and the knowledge that your suffering was literally built on the people who failed before you. Now, that's performance pressure. Some historians speculate this was borrowed from Central Asian tribes that predated the Mongols. Others argue it's an invention of later Persian chroniclers, trying to outdo each other in the gore department. But artifacts from excavated camps show rows of sharpened bone stakes near punishment areas, suggesting someone, at some point, got folded like a travel map. You help set up camp beside those very spikes that night. The moon hangs heavy, like it knows what's coming next. A hush falls over the warriors. Word spreads another punishment is due. This time, it's for a man who insulted one of the Khan's concubines. Not in a grand speech, just a look. An ill-timed glance during a ceremonial feast. Unfortunately for him, the Khan's guards interpreted that look as a capital offense. The man is dragged to a cauldron. Yes, a real iron cauldron, bubbling over with what smells like tallow and something sharper. They call it boiling oil, but you're pretty sure that's generous. It's more like anything flammable melted into a war broth. The man is bound at the wrists and ankles, lowered slowly by a winch into the scalding brew. You don't last long watching. Few do. Even the soldiers look away eventually. It's not the visuals that get you, it's the silence. No one talks during boiling. No one jokes. Even the camp dogs lie flat. According to Mongol tradition, boiling wasn't common. But it was deeply symbolic, used only in cases where public humiliation was key. Merchants who swindled Mongol lords, diplomats who lied, or traders who broke sacred hospitality laws. Genghis Khan. Despite his reputation, he was known to reserve boiling for those who violated Anda, the brotherhood bond. Break that, and your punishment had to make others think twice. Or 10 times. A quirky detail here. Some sources say the oil was often reused, making it progressively more flavored with previous executions. Talk about historical seasoning. Mongol cruelty had a recycling policy. As you lie back down that night, trying to close your eyes against the crimson flickers of torchlight and leftover screams, you realize you've barely scratched the surface of Mongol punishments. You've seen smothering, molten silva, bone folding, and boiling oil, and somehow, your neighbors in the prisoner camp say it gets worse. One of them, an old scribe from Samarkand, leans toward you and mutters, "Wait until you see what they do with trees." You gulp. Trees. Trees seem nice, friendly, oxygen-producing. Not these trees. But that, dear listener, is a nightmare for another night. You don't even get breakfast before the trees make their debut. At dawn, a pair of oxen drag in something unusual, too slender. Flexible saplings, still alive. Roots, bundled in damp cloth. You blink, thinking maybe the camp is getting into landscaping. But no, this is not about beautifying the empire. This is about bending. Specifically, trees bent in a way that would make even the most forgiving chiropractor sob into their goat milk. They pick a man from the prisoner line. His crime? Spying. They say. Or maybe he just had the wrong accent at the wrong moment. No one is ever told clearly. He's dragged toward the trees, stripped to the waist, arms flailing as he tries to run. Too late. The trunks have already been bent toward each other with ropes, quivering like loaded crossbows. His wrists and ankles are tied one to each tree. And then the fun part. The ropes holding the trunks together are cut. The trees snap back into place. So does he. Or rather, he doesn't. He comes apart. Instantly. Like a very unlucky rag doll, caught in a bungee jump, gone grotesquely wrong. Even the horses look away. This was a Mongol classic, known today as bending trees. And it may be the most cinematic of all their tortures fast. Dramatic. And terrifyingly symbolic. It was used for enemies of the state, captured scouts, and sometimes simply those who disrespected the chain of command. To the Mongols, disobedience, deserved spectacle, and nothing said, "Don't betray the Khan like your limbs flying east and west in opposite time zones." Historians still argue whether the Mongols invented this technique or borrowed it from older nomadic groups like the Scythians or Huns, who were also quite fond of letting nature do the dirty work. But the Mongols perfected it. They even developed techniques to make the bend tighter, more explosive, more poetic, adding insult to dismemberment. You're not sure if you should feel relieved that this punishment is quick or horrified at how effortlessly it's carried out. Either way, your breakfast appetite is gone. By mid-morning, you're helping dig pits along the camp perimeter. It's not until dusk that you realize what these pits are for. They're called the buried eye watchers. The condemned are buried up to their necks in packed earth. Arms gone. Legs also buried, just heads poking out, like grotesque mushrooms. Blinking in confusion and dread, you pass them on your way to collect firewood. One man whispers for water. Another cries for mercy in Persian. A third just hums tunelessly. Mechanically, they've been buried for hours. And if the wolves don't come first, dehydration will. Mongols didn't always kill outright. Sometimes the punishment was letting the elements finish the job, bit by slow, stinging bit. There's a chilling logic here. These buried victims were often used as deterrents. Lining roads to newly conquered cities, travelers would pass the forest of heads and think, maybe we shouldn't test the tax collector this time. One medieval Chinese account claims the heads were sometimes smeared with honey to attract flies and ants. Nature's slow executioners, you walk faster. Then there's the wagon. You hear the creaking long before you see it. One of the guards is dragging a cart loaded with supplies. And there's something off about the front. You draw closer. And there it is. A man. Upright. Attached to the cart by the mouth. More specifically, by the tongue. His mouth is open in a frozen scream. Tongue stretched forward. Nailed to the cart's wooden front board with a rusted spike. Every time the wagon moves, he has to follow shuffling, stumbling, trying not to fall. If he trips, his own tongue will tear. If he stops, the wagon won't. Mongol guards, make sure of that. This punishment, delightfully dubbed tongue nailing, was a favorite for liars, slanderers, or anyone who dared insult the Khan's court. And it wasn't just about pain, it was humiliation. Parade style, a mobile warning sign with a face. Interestingly, some sources suggest it was also used for poets who wrote anti-Mongol verses. So yes, imagine getting punished this horrifically just for rhyming Khan with Khan. Poetry was dangerous under the wrong dynasty. You stand frozen as the cart rolls past. The man is still alive. Eyes watering. Tongue swollen and dark. And then something even worse happens. He trips. You turn away before you see how far it tears. That night, you don't even try to sleep. You sit by the fire, your blanket drawn up to your chin, pretending not to hear the moaning from the buried heads or the creak of the wagon as it circles the camp again, like some grim parade float. Then someone tosses a sack at your feet. It lands with a wet thud. You open it. Ears. Human ears. A dozen of them. Still warm. Count them. A soldier, sis. Already turning away. His kill count for the day. Turns out, Mongol scouts often used body parts to track victories. Ears were popular, easy to cut, light to carry, and usually plentiful on any given battlefield. In some raids, ears were collected as proof of conquest, brought back in sacks like grotesque coin purses. One Chinese envoy once described a pyramid of ears rising outside a city wall. Each layer represented a different village. What's even more bizarre, they occasionally paid soldiers per ear. So naturally, things got imaginative. Historians still argue whether this practice was as widespread as accounts suggest, or whether some of these tales were exaggerated by terrified scribes trying to make their escape sound more heroic. But archaeological digs around Karakoram have revealed pits filled with singular bones, most notably ears and fingers. So even if it wasn't every battle, it was enough to leave a trail of cartilage across Eurasia. By now, you've lost count of the horror buffet served by this empire. Smothering rugs, boiling oil, buried heads, nailed tongues, flying limbs, a sack of human ears. And somehow, the guards are still joking around the fire, carving tiny horses out of bone, playing dice, telling stories about home. As if none of it mattered, you lie down again, flat on the rough hide of a half-tanned goat, wondering, what's worse, the brutality of the punishments, or how normal they seem here? Tomorrow, you'll learn what happens when skulls become decorations, and villages vanish under the weight of silent pyramids. And let's just say you'll never look at bone piles the same way again. You wake to the clatter of bones, not metaphorical bones, actual. Sun-bleached human remains, tumbling from a cart as two Mongol soldiers try to unload them onto a growing mound beside the road. No one bothers to gather the skulls rolling down the hill. They'll be added to the pile eventually, maybe by kids playing nearby. Because here in the Empire, bone doesn't mean burial. It means message. They call it the skull pyramid. You approach it slowly, careful not to trip over ribs or femurs embedded in the dry earth. The smell is gone. Years of sun and wind have cleaned the flesh. All that's left is a bleached, orderly terror, stacked in layers like macabre masonry. The base is wide, dozens of feet across, and it narrows toward the top like a ziggurat sculpted by nightmares. Each level is a row of skulls, some shattered, some still grinning, all silent. And here's the part that really sticks with you. Each pyramid tells a story. Some mark the conquest of cities. Others, the aftermath of revolts. A few are even arranged into recognizable shapes, crosses, circles, crescents, depending on the culture of the victims. Mongol punishment wasn't just cruelty. It was performance art, with a bone motif, the chilling thing. No one in the camp seems disturbed. Children chase each other around the pyramid, laughing. A merchant sets up a spice stall right beside a collapsed tibia pile. For them, it's not gruesome. It's background decor. Just another reminder that resistance is, well, strongly discouraged. Historians still argue whether the Mongols built these structures themselves or forced local populations to do the work. Some accounts say captives were made to stack the skulls of their own families before being executed last. Others claim Mongol generals did it personally to ensure proper alignment. Either way, the outcome is the same, a silent threat cast in calcium. You're roped into a crew transporting more bones. They're from a nearby battlefield where several hundred defenders made the bold, foolish mistake of shooting arrows at a Mongol envoy, a no-no of intercontinental proportions. In Mongol culture, envoys were sacred. To harm one was to insult the entire Khanate. So, the retaliation. Complete annihilation. Every living soul in the town was killed. Every body was processed, yes, processed for pyramid parts. The organs were burned. The meat left for carrion birds. The bones carted off like construction material. You can still see the flattened remains of the city walls. Now little more than a dust-blown memory. That's the part that keeps you up at night. The silence. Not the screams. Not the blood. But the utter absence of noise where a town once stood. A kind of negative space where life used to happen. A merchant haggling. A baby crying. A dog barking. Gone. all replaced by a dry wind whistling between hollow sockets. And yet, somehow, things get colder. Literally, the next day you're sent north with a small guard unit. The temperature drops fast. The landscape changes no longer steppe, but ice-crusted plains and groves of blackened pines. Your breath fogs as you trudge behind the caravan. Here, the punishments aren't fast or flashy. They're slow, lingering, icy. You pass a man sitting alone in the snow, completely still. At first, you think he's dead, but then he blinks. Barely. His body is bare to the waist. Skin bluish and cracked. Around him are the scattered remains of a fire long since gone cold. This is the freeze. The Mongols didn't always need ropes or blades. Sometimes, all they needed was geography. A prisoner would be stripped, placed in a shallow pit or exposed plain, and left to the elements. No food, no warmth, just the slow, creeping frost that hardens muscles, stops blood, and finally lulls the victim into a sleepy, permanent stillness. The logic was brutal. It cost nothing. No tools. No executioner. No cleanup. Just a little patience and a lot of cold. Victims could last hours, sometimes days. If they moved, they were beaten back into place with frozen sticks. If they begged, their mouths were stuffed with ice. Historians still debate whether this was a widespread practice or simply exaggerated in Russian chronicles, where winter made everything sound worse. But archaeological sites near Lake Baikal have revealed remains in sitting positions, arms wrapped around their knees, exactly as described in oral stories. You watch a guard toss a half-burnt log toward the man. Warm yourself. He laughs. Already walking away, the log lands a few feet away. Unreachable. Just enough to remind the man of what warmth used to be. By the time your unit heads back, you're too numb to speak, too numb to feel much of anything. And yet your escort says, "We've got something special planned tonight." Oh, joy. You arrive at a village-turned-garrison where prisoners are lined up along a wall. A new structure has been erected. A tall pole. A crossbeam. Ropes. No, not a crucifix. Worse. A flaying frame. You watch in detached horror as the first victim is lashed into place. He's not even struggling. His eyes are blank. The executioner approaches not with a sword, but with small, curved blades. Surgical. Personal. The flaying begins at the shoulders. Peeling back strips of skin with the care of a leather worker making fine gloves. You're told this man betrayed a general, sold secrets, tried to flee. His punishment isn't just death, it's display. He'll be flayed alive, and his skin will be hung over the entrance to the camp like a banner. Yes, a banner, one that flaps in the wind and makes newcomers think twice before disobeying orders. You nearly gag, but manage to stay upright. Curiously, Mongol flaying wasn't common. It was rare enough to be legendary, used for maximum effect when fear needed to ripple across entire provinces. One Persian chronicler claimed a whole bridge was once carpeted in human skin for a royal procession. Exaggeration, probably. But after today, you're not so sure anymore. You help raise the flayed skin that evening. It's stiff and red. The hands still recognizable. The face still has eyelashes. Someone ties it in place. The camp claps politely. Like it's an opening ceremony, you try to sleep. You fail. Across the camp, someone is humming again. The same humming you heard from the buried heads. A low, tuneless sound, floating across the snow, wrapping around your thoughts, like a fog you can't escape. Tomorrow you'll meet the goats. That's not a metaphor. It's Mongol punishment by tongue. And trust me, it's as weird as it sounds. You wake to a loud bleating. At first, your brain tries to file it under dream. Maybe it's a sheep. Maybe someone brought breakfast. But then the bleating gets closer, louder, more purposeful, followed by the sound of sloshing water and bizarrely laughter. That's when the goats arrive. You shuffle out of your tent, still groggy, still wrapped in a blanket that smells like panic and goat hair. Ahead of you is a circle of guards, gathered around a wooden platform. In the center is a man strapped down, his feet bare and dangling off the edge. One soldier is brushing his soles with what looks like coarse salt, the kind you'd use to preserve meat. Another is leading 2 goats toward him, tethered with thin rope. No one explains. They don't have to. The first goat sniffs, then licks, then really gets into it, slobbering over the salted feet like it's a gourmet feast. The man starts to twitch. Chuckles break out among the spectators. You've just been introduced to one of the Mongol Empire's strangest punishments: goat-licking torture. On paper, it sounds almost silly, but within minutes, you realize it's not just cruel, it's madness-inducing. The tongue of a goat is rough, like sandpaper made of spit. As it licks the salt, it also scrapes the skin over and over and over. At first, it tickles, then it burns, then it peels. The victim can't move, can't scream too loud. All he can do is wiggle and sob, while livestock performs the most absurd torture in recorded history. And it gets worse, because when the salt wears off, they reapply it. When the goat gets full, they bring in a fresher goat. Some Mongol punishments were designed to kill. Others were designed to send messages. This one, it was designed to linger, not just on the souls, but in the mind. Some victims were driven completely insane by the repetitive sensation days of it. In extreme cases, until their minds cracked and all they could do was laugh. Historians still argue whether this punishment was Mongol in origin or borrowed from earlier Persian methods. Some believe it was used primarily for corrupt merchants or disloyal translators, those whose betrayal wasn't worth death, but still needed, let's say, adjustment. A fringe account even claims it was used on a general's son for gambling with sacred horsehair charms. You can't look away. Not because you're entertained, because it's hypnotizing. The goat licks. The man shrieks. The soldiers howl with laughter. And it all keeps going. Long past when you think it should stop. By midday, the man passes out. The goats are led away, tails wagging. The platform is hosed off with sour milk. You're told to mop it dry. The next phase of your nightmare begins before the wool even dries. An iron cap is brought out from a nearby yurt. It's heavy, wide-brimmed, and has holes drilled in the top like a cooking pot. It's called the skull cap of nails. You don't want to know what it's for. But of course, you find out. Another prisoner is forced to kneel. This one, a scribe caught falsifying records for tax evasion. The cap is placed on his head, carefully aligned. Then come the nails thin, sharp, and cruelly long. They're slipped through the holes, resting just above the scalp. Then, a mallet, one by one. Each nail is gently tapped, not slammed, tapped The goal isn't instant death, it's gradual penetration, like growing a crown of metal thorns. Eventually, each spike pierces the skin, then bone, then brain. The victim twitches, mumbles a prayer, then goes still. According to Mongol belief, punishment should reflect the crime. The scribe who tampered with records receives piercing clarity, some grim sense of irony, twisted into practice. The cap is removed. The nails stay. A guard mutters. Now he finally understands. You don't argue. This punishment was rare, so rare, in fact, that some historians question whether it happened at all. A few Persian texts describe it in poetic terms, while others say it was more a metaphor for overwhelming guilt. But Mongol oral legends are full of references to the man with the iron head, which suggests someone, somewhere, wore that cap for real. You're shaken, but no one gives you time to recover. That evening, the guards begin tying people up for the dragging. You hear the word whispered long before you see it happen. Dragging is simple, brutal, effective. The prisoner is tied by the wrists or ankles to the back of a horse and told to run. Spoiler: no one can run that fast. You watch as the first victim, an accused deserter, is lashed to a black stallion. The rider doesn't gallop. That would be too quick. Instead, they trot, a steady, jerking pace that flips the man over and over. His skin scrapes across the rocky ground. His screams come in wet bursts. By the end, he's less person and more pulpy trail marker. The Mongols used this method often on battlefield defectors or cowards caught fleeing their posts. It was efficient, mobile, and required no tools beyond a rope and an angry horse. You think about running? Just once. But then you remember the horse, the salt, the nails, and whatever next punishment is waiting in the wings. You try not to cry. The fire cracks beside you. A soldier nearby is roasting meat mutton, hopefully, and humming a steppe lullaby that sounds suspiciously like the hum you've now heard in 3 separate locations. Either everyone hums when things get grim, or it's something older, something that just stays in the air after a punishment has been dealt. You lie down again, but your back refuses to relax. You keep imagining the nails, the dragging, the goat's tongue, each one flashing behind your eyelids like a slideshow from a very cursed history class. And tomorrow, they say tomorrow's punishment involves latrines. You already hate the sound of that. There are smells you can prepare for burning wood. Horse sweat, dried blood. You've gotten used to those by now. But this one ambushes you, crawls into your nostrils, takes off its boots, and makes itself at home. You know something's wrong the moment you step outside. The air carries a new scent, pungent, acrid, deeply biological. Your eyes water, your stomach churns, and then you see the pit. At the far edge of the encampment, past the supply carts and the communal fire, lies a sunken circle of slop, ringed by crude fencing. The Mongols, for all their brutal efficiency, are still human. They have waste. And where waste gathers, someone always draws the short straw. Today, it's a prisoner accused of blasphemy, mocking the Khan's ancestral spirits, or maybe just cursing during a feast. Either way, he's stripped, tied by the waist, and slowly lowered into the pit. Not all the way, just waist deep, enough to be fully immersed in the thick, rancid stew of refuse below. And then, They leave him there. No gag. No beating. Just immersion. The punishment is time. The punishment is humiliation. This wasn't invented by the Mongols. Of course, ancient civilizations had similar methods. Think Roman cloaca shaming or the infamous Chinese night stool box. But the Mongols turned it into an art form. For them, to defile someone with filth was to unmake their spirit, to sever them from honor, ancestors, and earthly pride. Historians still argue whether this method was a standardized punishment or reserved for particularly odious insults. Some chronicles dismiss it as myth. Others document it clearly, especially in Persian and Central Asian records. One even refers to a captured noble made to drink the shadows of the Khan's dung, which sounds suspiciously metaphorical until you see the pit. You're told to stand guard nearby, which is somehow your punishment now. The man inside cries for help at first, but by nightfall, he goes silent. Not from death, from shame. His skin is slick with unspeakable filth. His eyes dull. He doesn't resist when flies land on him. He doesn't even blink. You wonder if he'll ever feel clean again. You wonder if you will, but there's no time to reflect, because down by the riverside, something else is being prepared. The guards are whispering about a spy, a real one this time, caught with coded scrolls sewn into the hem of his tunic. You think they'll just kill him? Oh no, not when there's entertainment to be had. Tonight, the camp hosts the punishment games. The spy is bound in the middle of a circle of torches. Around him, several guards line up with bows, arrows tipped in bright red pigment. They take turns, shooting not to kill, but to land arrows around him. The closer the shot, the more the others cheer. The spy flinches with every arrow, knowing one slip, and he loses an eye. Two. Or worse. Then comes the real game. They untie him and hand him a bow. The object, he has to hit a melon, placed on top of another prisoner's head, his fellow conspirator. One shot. If he succeeds, both live. If he misses, the friend dies. If he refuses to shoot, they both die. It's Mongol justice meets psychological torture. He shoots. He misses. You don't need me to tell you how that ends. Historians still debate whether these games were officially sanctioned or merely tolerated diversions among the bored garrison guards. Some say Genghis Khan discouraged such cruelty, citing honor above sadism. Others argue these events served as practical stress tests, loyalty under pressure, skills under fear. Either way, no one seems particularly bothered by the outcome. The spy's fate is sealed. The poker, not the card game. The metal rod. He's tied down again. A long iron rod is heated in the campfire until it glows white-hot. It's not inserted. That would be too crude. Instead, it's hovered over his chest, close enough to sear, not close enough to char. This lasts minutes, hours, intervals of agony, so precise it feels like someone's composing a symphony with screams. Eventually, it is pressed to his skin. Once, twice, just enough to leave permanent scars that mark him as a traitor. Then he's let go. Yes, let go. Mongols didn't always kill their enemies. Sometimes, they preferred to brand them. A living warning that walked back into their own lands bearing proof of pain. Psychological warfare in flesh form. And here's a quirky bit: some Mongol commanders had signature burn patterns. A 3-ring brand for traitors, a zigzag for liars, a spiral for oathbreakers. like medieval emojis. Burned into your torso, you help clean the poker with snow and straw. It still smells like meat. Later that night, as the camp settles into uneasy slumber, someone asks you if you've heard the story of the queen. You shake your head. You don't want another story. You want sleep, peace, anything that doesn't involve burning, dragging, or goat tongues. But they tell you anyway. They say she was beautiful, a foreign queen who married into Mongol royalty to secure her people's safety, but she plotted in secret, sent messages by pigeon, offered poisoned wine. When she was discovered, she didn't beg. She stood tall, said nothing, smiled. They gave her a punishment so refined, it became legend. You don't learn what it is yet. That's for another day, or another nightmare. For now, you roll over, pressing your face into a fur blanket that smells like horses and ash. Around you, the wind picks up. The torches flicker. Somewhere in the darkness, a goat bleats again, and you wonder, genuinely wonder, what fresh cruelty the Empire will invent next. You wake to drums. Not festive ones. Not even vadrums. These have a deeper tone, like distant thunder trying to break through your ribs. The camp stirs slowly, sleep still clinging to every movement. But there's a buzz in the air, a kind of communal tightening. Today is not ordinary. Today, a royal decree has come down from Karakoram itself. The Khan has ordered a spectacle, a punishment so grand, so theatrical. It will be sung about around fires for years. And lucky you're about to witness it from the front row. You're led to a clearing where two massive trees once stood. Now, they've been carved into frames, upright beams, thick crossbars, a kind of open scaffold. This is no execution post. This is a human yurt. They bring in the accused, 4 of them. Traitors who broke Mongol embargoes, sold weapons to enemies, and refused to kneel when the Khan's emissaries visited their city. These aren't just prisoners. They're examples. Each is stripped, then lashed into place, one to each upright post. No kneeling, no sitting. Their backs are bent into awkward curves to support the canvas roof that will be stretched over them. That's right. The yurt that will house today's royal lunch will be held up by people. You try not to gag. The guards even tie extra ropes to their necks so they can't sag or slump too far forward. If they faint, they choke. If they cry, the tears vanish into the cloth. It's said that Genghis himself once punished a group of rebellious nobles by making them foundations of hospitality. Their bodies used to prop up tents during a week-long feast. It wasn't about killing them. It was about using them, reducing proud men to tools, to furniture. Historians still debate the truth of this tale. Was it ever done on this scale? Was it legend, exaggerated by later writers who wanted to inflate Mongol cruelty, but oral traditions among Kazakh herders and Uyghur chroniclers hint that something like this may have happened more than once. You peek under the tent flap once it's set. The traitors' faces are red, strained, veins bulging as the weight of the roof presses down. Guests arrive, sit cross-legged on rugs, and begin their meal as if nothing strange supports the ceiling. One noble even hangs his fur cloak on the wrist of a bound man. It dangles like a coat hook. Someone laughs. Later, the bodies will be removed, probably dead, maybe just broken. Either way, they won't be reused. That would be improper. You help dismantle the yurt in silence, but the punishments don't stop. In fact, They seem to be increasing. That afternoon, a row of tree coffins is prepared. Shallow pits are dug, and prisoners are dragged to them. This time, there's a twist. They're not buried entirely. No. The Mongols leave the eyes exposed. Just the eyes. Each victim is sealed into the earth up to their eyebrows, with a wooden box over their head to keep crows from pecking too soon. They lie there, blinking upward at the sky, unable to move, unable to speak. One of them is a woman. Her crime, defending her husband during a raid. She bit a Mongol soldier's hand. That was enough. The guards mock her. Enjoy the stars, one says, kicking dirt in her face. This method, partial burial, was meant to be slow, symbolic, and terrifying. It transformed the body into a warning sign. Some versions were used to preserve victims for later interrogation, trade, or twisted bets on how long they'd last. The buried could remain alive for hours or even days, depending on weather and willpower. Historians differ here. Was this reserved for women or for outspoken civilians? Persian records suggest it was used on diplomats who refused to recant. Others believe it was an improvised tactic, a kind of frontier justice, born from boredom and cruelty combined. You can't get the image out of your mind. A field of blinking eyes in the moonlight, like a garden of regret, as if that weren't enough. The next punishment feels even more pointed. A man is brought forward, accused of lying during a trade negotiation. Not theft, not treason, just lying. The punishment, nailing his tongue to a cart again. But this time, it's a ceremonial cart, painted red, carved with dragons and wolves. This isn't just about humiliation, it's a festival display. He's nailed to the front as usual. Tongues stretched grotesquely, body forced to follow every lurch of the wheels. But instead of a guard pulling the cart, it's children, Mongol children, giggling as they drag the parade through camp. Every bounce jars his body. Every pothole risks tearing flesh. The message is clear. Words have weight, especially dishonest ones. And again, this isn't a one-time oddity. Steppe cultures had deep traditions about the power of language. To lie under oath or to break a promise made under the sky and eternal blue heaven was an offense not just to people, but to the gods. The tongue, therefore, became the focus of retribution. You feel your own mouth go dry just watching. You start talking less. You barely whisper for the rest of the day. By nightfall, the camp's energy changes. There's a tension now, like something bigger is coming. You hear that Genghis Khan's grandson is visiting. A Borjigin. Blood of the conqueror himself. That means tomorrow will be dramatic. They're already preparing the stakes. Not metaphorical ones, actual sharpened poles. Dozens of them, one for each town that resisted the new tax law. Tomorrow, people won't just be punished. They'll be arranged, but that's a horror for another cold morning. Tonight, you lie awake under a canvas, once held up by broken men. You wonder what holds you up now. Fear habits, sheer inertia. You don't know anymore. And still, you hum, just like the buried. By the time the sun rises, the camp smells like ash and pine pitch. Fires have been burning through the night to prepare the wood long. Sharpened poles carved from felled trees, now slick with animal fat to ease penetration. You're handed a bundle of rope and a skin of fermented mare's milk. But you can't drink. Not today. Not when your first task is helping raise the impalement field. You trudge behind the work crew as they dig narrow holes in the frostbitten earth, hammering stakes deep into the ground until only their lethal tips remain. There are 20 poles, 20 names, 20 small parchment scrolls tied with red string, each one detailing the crime of a condemned villager. The crimes are mild by your standards: failure to deliver horses, suspicion of sheltering Chinese scouts, one woman who struck a soldier with a cooking ladle. The punishment is not mild. As midday breaks, the condemned are brought forth stripped, silent, resigned. They are not Mongols. Of course, no Mongol would be punished like this. These are civilians from recently absorbed settlements: Turks, Uyghurs, Tanguts. Ethnic distinctions blur when everyone bleeds the same color. The guards work with precision, almost ceremony. Victims are lowered carefully onto the poles, their limbs bound to ensure a vertical fall. The effect is grotesque and slow. The poles disappear inch by inch into the body, guided by gravity and weight. There is little blood at first. That's the point. The internal tearing, the rupturing, the final scream, those come later, and they last for hours, sometimes longer. Mongol impalement, unlike the brutal speed of Ottoman or Persian techniques, was meant to preserve sound. It was meant to be heard. You back away after the fourth scream. Some guards don't flinch. One of them eats dried apricots as if watching a puppet show. According to accounts from Persian scribes, Genghis Khan's sons favored impalement as a symbolic warning to border towns. It wasn't used often, but when it was always in groups, always arranged, always visible from a distance, a line of stakes rising on the horizon like cursed fence posts. Historians still argue whether the Mongols developed this independently or borrowed it from Central Asian warlords. There's even speculation that it began as a way to punish horse thieves, then expanded in both purpose and scale. As the last stake is filled, the camp falls into a strange hush. The screams become background noise, distant, rhythmic, almost meditative. A child walks past you chewing on bread. He doesn't even look up at the dying bodies. You feel something in your chest shift. Not horror. Not even sadness. Just numbness. A layer of frost where your sympathy used to be. The evening brings a new twist. The prisoners aren't the only ones being punished. One of the guards, yes, one of their own, has been accused of gambling with stolen tribute, silver. This is different. Mongols rarely punish their own in public. But when they do, it's theater. The man is dragged to the center of camp, hands tied behind his back, shirt ripped open. No words, no trial, just a thick rod of birchwood dipped in brine. What follows is a flogging, so methodical you lose count of the strikes. 50, 60. More each lash lands with a sickening slap. The guard doesn't scream, but his knees buckle eventually. They always do. When it's over, he's untied and thrown into a dung cart, not even granted a tent. That's his punishment to recover beside the refuse. Like refuse. It's a rare glimpse of internal discipline, a reminder that even within the empire, no one is untouchable. Not entirely. You're told the man will be reassigned to latrine duty. For life. A living demotion. Later, a prisoner tries to escape. Young. Fast. Smart. 2. He makes it past the outer ring of yurts and nearly to the ravine. But Mongol scouts are faster. They don't kill him outright. That would be merciful. Instead, they bring him back for a special kind of justice. His hands are crushed beneath a stone anvil, one blow for each league he ran. Then his kneecaps. He doesn't even scream at the end, just slumps forward, broken. As the guards laugh and start betting on how long he'll live, you're asked to clean up the blood trail. There's so much of it that your boots are slick for hours. That night, the executioner tells a story. He doesn't speak often, but when he does, people listen. He describes a time Genghis himself ordered a punishment called the iron yoke, a heavy beam tied across the shoulders, bolted to the wrists, designed to be worn for weeks. The victim could neither lie down nor raise his arms. He could eat only what others spooned into his mouth. Sleep nearly impossible. The yoke rubbed his collarbones raw, crushed his pride, turned him into an upright corpse. Eventually, the man begged to be beheaded. Genghis refused, said, "Let him walk until his shadow no longer follows." The phrase haunts you, until his shadow no longer follows. What does that even mean? Death madness oblivion. You start humming again. Quietly. That same strange melody you've heard whispered from pits and tents. Others have noticed. A soldier hums it while sharpening his blade. A prisoner sings it under his breath before being dragged away. You ask someone about it. They shrug. It's an old song. They say, from before the empire, maybe older than even Genghis. That night, no one sleeps. The stakes are still occupied. The screams have stopped, but their echoes crawl through the camp like smoke. You stare at the stars, wondering if the constellations ever look down and regret what humans do. Probably not. Stars don't care. And then, just before dawn, a messenger arrives. He carries a scroll bearing the Khan's crimson seal. More punishments are coming. A queen, a traitor priest, a soldier who lied about his lineage. New horrors for a new week. You're assigned to the royal camp now. Promotion. They call it. You wonder if it's just another stake in disguise. You roll up your mat, tee your boots, tighten your belt, and march toward whatever fresh cruelty waits on the other side of sunrise. You march for 2 days across bone-colored plains. The skies wide and uncaring. The winds carving shallow grooves into your cheeks. The new camp is larger, cleaner, more organized, and somehow more terrifying. Royal yurts rise like fat. White mountains in a circle, each rimmed with gold thread and guarded by men whose armor actually matches. This is no frontier outpost. This is the Khan's personal court on campaign. And everything here, down to the way the meat is salted, feels deliberate. Even the punishments. You're not just a witness now. You're part of the machinery. You're told the prisoner has already arrived a high priest from Samarkand, accused of spreading anti-Mongol omens. At first glance, he doesn't seem like much. Tall, old, thin as a reed, with eyes that glitter like dying stars. But the charge is serious. Spiritual insubordination. Dangerous words in an empire built on the idea that the sky itself gave Genghis the right to rule. You don't insult heaven's favorite son without consequences. The court gathers in silence. No laughter this time. No humming. Just wind and fire. The priest is brought forward. Hands bound in red cloth, symbolic. You're told of the blood he will spill. He's not defiant. He doesn't grovel. He just stares forward, like he's already seeing something beyond this world. Then they tie him to a suspension rack, two curved beams held upright by posts, forming an arc. His body is lashed across the curve, spine stretched until his ribs jut out like branches. His punishment, slow stretched dislocation. No breaking, no snapping, just hours, maybe days of nerves pulled tight, of joints screaming silently as cartilage grinds away. You're tasked with applying hot cloths to keep his tendons pliable. It's supposed to prolong the agony. You try not to meet his eyes, but at one point, you do. He smiles. That's worse than screaming. This method, according to scribes from the Yuan court, was reserved for enemies who wielded spiritual influence. The idea wasn't just to kill the man, it was to unmake him, to strip him of dignity, breath, posture, until even the gods forgot his name. Historians still argue whether the curved rack was a Mongol invention or a modification of Chinese torture devices. Either way, it's effective. Disturbingly so, after 40 hours. Hades. Not from blood loss, from exhaustion, from sheer, withering tension. They burn his body, ashes to the wind, as if to say, you spoke against the sky. The sky takes you back. No one claps. No one mourns. They just move on. You hope for a pause. Some quiet. Maybe a day without bones cracking. But no. The next case is already waiting. And this one is. Stranger. A soldier accused of faking lineage. He claimed descent from one of Genghis Khan's cousins, an attempt to climb the ranks. Turns out, he was a stable boy from Bokhara. And now, because of that lie, he's about to endure the paper-cut death. It's not literal paper. Mongols used thin leather slips, soaked in milk until soft, then sharpened with stones. The executioner takes one, smiles, and begins the slow process of slicing. Fingertips, webbing between toes, eyelids, no deep cuts, nothing lethal, just slivers of agony. Applied with surgical care, the man lasts longer than you expect. Even starts singing at one point, an off-key lullaby you vaguely recognize from a village near the Oxus River. The guards chuckle. He wants his mother. One says. Eventually, the bleeding becomes too much. They stop, not out of mercy, but because the next phase needs him conscious. He's tied to a board, and they begin the branding. 3 symbols, a broken horse, liar, a downward arrow betrayer, and a circle, unworthy of command. These marks are seared into his chest, back, and tongue. That's right, tongue. They brand the tip, so even his lies will now taste of ash. Branding wasn't routine in Mongol law. But for soldiers, it carried weight. It meant exclusion, disgrace. These men couldn't ride under a banner again, couldn't swear oaths, couldn't even drink from communal bowls. They were marked, permanently, as outside the fold. Mongols prized loyalty above blood. Lie about either, and your mouth paid the price. He's tossed into the refuse pit. Not dead. Not quite. But certainly done. Then comes the third punishment. One that turns your stomach in a way none of the others have. They call it the box. It's for a woman this time. Not a queen. Not yet. But noble. Captured from a rebellious steppe tribe that refused to bend the knee. Her crime, organizing a failed escape, killing 2 guards, and unforgivable spitting at a royal son. You almost admire her, They dress her in ceremonial robes. Why? You don't know. And lead her to the box, a coffin-sized trunk, barely wide enough for movement. She's laid inside. Her hands are bound to her thighs, her ankles lashed. A small funnel is placed in her mouth, and then the lid is closed. You don't see what happens next. You only hear it, over the course of 3 days. The funnel is used to pour in water, broth, sewer milk, and toward the end, boiling tea. Her cries echo through the seams, dampened but unmistakable. The box rocks, scrapes, then stops. Silence. They don't open it. They bury it as is. This punishment, according to oral accounts, was reserved for high-status women who defied sacred order. It was both symbolic, sealed in shame, and practical. No blood, no mess, just vanishing. Some historians believe the box was myth, invented later by European travelers seeking exotic horrors to report back to court. Others point to burial mounds with small wooden enclosures unearthed in western Mongolia, suggesting at least some kernels of truth. And besides, myth or not, you heard it. You heard her. That night, no one sleeps in the royal camp. Even the guards walk quietly. Even the horses seem subdued. You stare at the fire. Try not to think about the box, or the curved rack, or the man with brands on his tongue. You just listen to the wind, to the rustling grass, and yes, to the humming, faint, distant, echoing. It's everywhere now, even in your dreams. You wake before the sun, your eyes sticky with smoke, your throat raw from sleeping too close to the fire. The camp isn't stirring yet, but the sky is already turning that sickly pre-dawn gray, the color of dust and bad omens. A rider approaches, cloak, stiff with frost. He tosses you a water skin and a folded order sealed with black wax. One word is stamped into it: defector. Another punishment awaits. But this time, it's personnel. The defector is a young man barely more than a boy caught trying to flee north to the Russian steppes. He'd spent months among the Mongols, served them faithfully, translated for them, shared their food and salt. But the moment he saw an opening, he ran. They didn't even need to chase him. He was caught by a traveling merchant who recognized his dialect and turned him in for half a pouch of silver. Loyalty, after all, is only valuable if someone can profit from it. Now, he's in the center of camp, surrounded by silence. No taunting, no fire jokes, just tension. The soldiers know what's coming. This isn't just punishment, it's ceremony. A defector who lived among them knew their words, their rituals, their war songs, is the deepest betrayal. His crime is not leaving, it's knowing. He's tied to a wooden frame shaped like an open triangle, arms pulled back and up in a way that dislocates the shoulders slowly. It's called the wings of the coward. The symbolism is obvious. He tried to fly. So now they break the wings. The executioner begins by driving bone needles beneath the nails. One by one, 18 fingers and toes. A shallow bowl collects the blood, which is later poured onto the fire, an offering to the spirits of the ancestors, whose trust he broke. You watch the flames hiss, sending up thick, black smoke that curls unnaturally in the air. It smells like burnt metal and incense. Once the needles are done, they cut away his tunic, exposing the back. The skin is marked in chalk symbols you've seen before. Not letters, Not even language. Just marks. 1. For treachery. 2. For betrayal. 3. For cowardice. Then, they begin flaying the back in long, clean strips. The skin is not discarded. It is tanned, dried, and eventually tied around a spear. That spear will be carried by scouts on future missions. A reminder that the Khan's eyes are everywhere. That loyalty is not forgotten, nor is betrayal. Historians still debate whether this type of skin flag punishment was a common practice or a fringe ceremonial act. Some Mongol sources omit it entirely, while others, particularly Persian and Armenian chroniclers, describe it in detail. The Mongols may not have done it often, but when they did, they made sure the story lasted longer than the man. By midday, there's nothing left to do but bury the rest of him. Not with honors. Not even with stones. Just a shallow trench and a handful of dust. Later, in the quiet, you're called to the forge. Not for weapons. For another punishment. They're preparing the fire cage. A device built from curved iron rods, shaped like a rib cage, just large enough to enclose a man standing. There are no doors. Once the person is placed inside, the cage is sealed shut with molten solder. Then, beneath it, a low fire is lit. Slow, controlled. Not an inferno. Just enough heat to cook the air from the inside out. You help lift the cage. The victim this time is a caravan leader who plotted to poison a water source to delay the Mongol advance. His fate to bake. Not burn. Not die quickly. But to stand until his lungs collapse from the heat. Until his muscles lock and sweat stops flowing. It takes hours, during which the cage glows faint red, like an ember, during which his screams turn to rasps. Then, silence, during which you lose track of how many times you blink just to stop your eyes from watering. When it's done, the metal is allowed to cool. Then the body is tipped out, blackened, curled, still somehow whole. The cage cleaned, stored, used again. Some say the fire cage came from Chinese engineers, absorbed into the Mongol war machine. Others argue it was used long before that, in the deserts near the Aral Sea, adapted from portable braziers. What's not debated is its purpose. It made a man into a message, a visible, audible warning to any who thought the empire could be undermined. That night, you find yourself posted near the riverbank. A strange calm hangs in the air. No screams, no shouts, just the water, trickling over stones, and the occasional hoot of an owl overhead. You should feel relieved. You don't, because the next punishment is already waiting. You hear them before you see them. The throat singers. Low, rumbling voices, vibrating like thunder through a cave. A line of prisoners is marched in spies. 3 of them, caught sending coded messages hidden in arrow shafts. But this punishment is not death. It's worse. It's mutilation with mercy. The first spy is forced to kneel. A heated blade is drawn. His nose is sliced off in a single motion. Then, his ears. Then his lips. He's still breathing, still conscious, but every orifice that might communicate, deceive, or charm has been stripped away. The next 2 endure the same. The idea, you realize, is not to kill them, but to silence them forever, to make them unpresentable, to ensure they can't blend in. I can't ever hide. Can't be mistaken for anything other than what they are marked traitors. Historians still argue whether this practice came from Mongol roots or was influenced by earlier Chinese and Turkic traditions, which used facial mutilation as punishment for thieves and liars. What makes the Mongol version unique is its precision, nothing left to chance, nothing left intact, but life itself. You're told to take them to the next outpost. Let them walk there. Let the guards on duty see what's coming, if discipline falters. As they stagger away, bleeding and silent, you wonder how far a man can go before he loses the right to be considered human. The sun rises again, as it always does, uncaring and bright. The fires are stoked. The horses are fed. Another cart of prisoners arrives. You take your position beside the poles. And you wait, because punishment, here, is not about justice. It's about memory. By now, you don't flinch when they scream. Not when the skin peels. Not when the bones crack. Not even when the camp dogs start howling like they're trying to sing harmony with the condemned. What rattles you now is the quiet, the moments between punishments, the long, slow hush, where no one dares speak above a whisper. Because that's when the worst ones come. This morning is one of those silences. A strange tent is erected before sunrise, its walls layered with black felt instead of the usual cream-colored wool. Its ropes are red, its pegs obsidian-tipped. You've never seen it before, and no one offers an explanation. The guards assigned to it don't speak. They carry their spears upside down. That's never a good sign. The condemned is brought out midday. She's older, maybe 60, hunched, with ink-stained fingers. A scribe. You hear? One of the court recorders who dared to forge a passage in the Khan's lineage. Just one sentence. One harmless embellishment. But in the Mongol Empire, history is sacred. You don't rewrite the blood of Genghis. She is led into the black tent. You are not. No one is. What happens inside is heard, but not seen. There's no scream. Just a low, rhythmic whimper. And something else. The faint sound of liquid. When she emerges, hours later, her limbs are still attached. But she's blind. Her eyes are gone. Not burned. Not stabbed. Just gone. Hollow. As if scooped out. And her mouth sewn shut. They say this is the silencing rite. An obscure punishment reserved for those who try to alter sacred truth. The idea isn't to end a life, but to end a voice. She lives on, kept as a servant in the archive tent, but can never speak again, nor witness the stories she once tried to change. Historians rarely mention the black tent. Some claim it was a myth, an allegory for censorship. Others swear it existed, carried from city to city on royal campaigns, used only in rare instances. What's undeniable is its effect. No one in camp speaks for the rest of the day, not even the guards. That evening, the silence breaks with another punishment, one loud enough to rattle the ribs of the yurts. A man is dragged into camp by a team of oxen. His crime, attempting to steal a royal horse. Not just any horse, a descendant of Genghis's own prized stallion. That's like trying to rob a temple while wearing shoes made of insults. He's tied between two carts facing opposite directions. His arms are secured to one, his legs to the other. The carts begin to move slowly, very slowly. The man doesn't scream right away. First, he gasps. Then, his back arches. And finally, like a badly told riddle, he comes apart. This is known among the soldiers as quartering by cart. The Mongols didn't invent it, but they refined it. The carts are weighted carefully. The timing of the horse is coordinated. The goal isn't just to kill, but to do so with elegance. To orchestrate a spectacle that makes men swallow their pride and their next 5 meals, by the time the limbs snap free, the crowd is already silent. There's no cheer, just awe. This wasn't just punishment. This was theater. Later that night, you're pulled from your sleep. A messenger arrives with a scrap of parchment. No words, just a drawn symbol, an upside-down eye. That means you're to report for witness duty. You follow 2 guards into the woods. Far from camp, a prisoner has been sentenced to blind wandering. His offense, smuggling sacred scrolls to foreign scholars. The punishment, banishment, but with a twist. They blindfold him, spin him until he vomits, and lead him several miles into the forest before removing the cloth and setting him loose. He's given no food, no tools, no shoes, just a bell tied to one ankle, so that predators or curious soldiers can follow his path. The goal is not execution. It's erasure. If he returns, they say, his life will be spared. If he dies, the forest will keep his bones. You and the guards wait on the ridge, listening as the bell jingles through the trees. First strong, then weaker, then silent. No one speaks on the walk back. These punishments, blindness, silence, dismemberment, forced wandering, aren't about control. They're about making sure the story survives. Mongol law may have been unwritten for generations, but its memory was carved into bodies, into scarred faces, into the burned and the buried. And just when you think you've seen every horror possible, you meet the bowl-bearer. He's an old man, chained at the neck, carrying a wide bronze bowl that never leaves his hands. Inside, a mix of ash, bone fragments, and the shredded cloth of his former robes. He walks in circles around the central fire all day. That's his punishment for failing to save a city during a siege. Not because he surrendered, but because he promised protection and couldn't deliver. Now, he carries the remains of that failure forever. It's not pain. It's shame. A sentence with no end. No one touches him. No one talks to him. But everyone watches. Especially the young. You realize something that night. Lying beneath the cold stars, the Mongols didn't just punish with blades and fire. They punished with memory. They didn't need prisons, they had songs. They didn't need chains, they had stories. And once you became one, you never stopped being one. The next morning, a girl with a wooden doll walks past you, humming, a tune you can't place. She has stitched a tiny felt hand onto the doll's back. Just one hand. The other is missing. The detail isn't accidental. You ask her, "What's the doll's name?" She shrugs. The man who touched what he shouldn't. Then she skips off, humming the same melody you've heard all week. The one that starts when the punishment's due, the one that never really stops. You no longer know what day it is. The sky is the same shade of iron every morning. The food tastes like boiled memory. And the punishments have begun to fold into each other like a terrible lullaby. There's a new order tacked to the central yurt today, this time written in both classical Mongolian and Persian. For maximum reach, it reads, "Disobedience will be remembered in the flesh." No signatures, no seals, just that phrase. You don't need a translator. The meaning is obvious, and so is the fear it plants. The first punishment of the day arrives early and loud. A group of bandits has been captured, former soldiers who deserted and formed a raiding party, attacking Mongol supply lines. Their crime isn't just theft, it's abandonment. The worst kind. Their sentence is one you've only heard about in whispered legends. You watch as long wooden poles are sharpened and heated in a charcoal pit. The men are tied face down on low tables, their backs bare, skin already blistered from the sun. Then comes the punishment. They are slowly pierced through the rectum with the hot stakes, the point pushed in at an angle designed to avoid vital organs so the body won't die immediately. It's a careful, monstrous calculation. The pole exits at the shoulder or collarbone after hours of agonizing pressure. The victim is then hoisted upright, left to hang impaled until gravity or shock finishes the work. This is not just execution. It is an edifice of agony. The men are raised outside the camp's entrance, planted like grotesque signposts that sway gently in the wind. Some survive for a full day. One, you're told, lived into a second night, mumbling to himself in delirium, repeating his name over and over, as if trying to remember he existed. The Mongols did not use impalement frequently, but when they did, it was reserved for high betrayal. It wasn't just death, it was inversion. The body made into a vertical scream, a visible, lingering statement. Historians still argue whether the method was native to the Mongols or adapted from Persian or Turkic penal traditions. But Mongol records make it clear anyone who fled the horde could expect a fate both excruciating and symbolic. Later that same day, you're called to the meat tents not for a meal, but for a lesson. A cook has been caught watering down fermented mare's milk, cheating not warriors or nobles, but the spirits themselves, who were meant to receive proper libation. His punishment: boiling, not in water, in milk. You watch, hands shaking, as a large copper cauldron is prepared. The milk is poured in slowly, stirred with wide ladles to keep it from burning. The cook is stripped, tied at the wrists, and gently lowered in, not submerged, just up to his waist. The guards laugh as the milk begins to boil. It foams, hisses, turns pale and sticky, clinging to his skin like glue. He writhes in the vat, and the smell is indescribable, a sour, human stench that fuses with the camp air and settles over your clothes. The milk eventually curdles. So does the man. And when it's done, the cauldron is tipped over, the contents poured into a trench that's immediately set alight. The spirits, they say, must be repaid. Some say this punishment is a myth, that boiling in milk was an invention of Persian poets who wanted to demonize their conquerors. Others insist it happened, but rarely. Only when religious offense was involved. Whatever the truth, the camp speaks of it for weeks. You hear a child refer to spoiled milk as cook's bathwater, and no one corrects him. As dusk approaches, another punishment begins, Keter, but somehow more cruel. A man is accused of killing a sacred hawk, not on purpose. He was practicing with his bow and loosed an arrow into the sky without looking. The hawk, one of the Khan's own, dropped dead at his feet. He begs forgiveness, offers gold, offers his horse. The court declines. His punishment is the biting death. You think it sounds metaphorical. It's not. A pit is dug, the man is stripped, smeared in honey, and tied to a post in the center. Around the edge, 4 cages are placed. Each contains a wolf pup, starved for 3 days. The pups are released, not all at once, but one by one. They circle, sniff, bite. At first it's small nips, then flesh, then tendons. You try to look away, but you're ordered to watch. So you remember what 1 arrow costs, says the guard. The man survives the first 2 wolves. Barely. By the 3rd, he's begging for a blade. By the 4th, he's beyond words. This method wasn't common, but oral accounts from steppe tribes suggest that punishments using wild animals were part of Mongol judicial theatrics, especially when the crime offended nature or spirits. Historians argue whether the wolves were ever truly used, or whether it was more common to substitute dogs or even goats. But the symbolism remains. Let the earth reclaim the offender, piece by piece, with its own teeth. You don't sleep that night. No one does. There's a feeling in the air, like the sky itself is holding its breath. Something big is coming. You hear it in the way the guards sharpen their blades without speaking, in the way the horses whinny restlessly, in the way the firewood is stacked higher than usual. That's when you hear the whisper the queen. She has arrived, captured months ago, transported in silence, hidden from even the highest-ranking generals. Her name has not been spoken aloud, but everyone knows who she is. A royal consort of a rebel warlord, a strategist, a fighter, a woman who once sent Mongol messengers back without tongues. Her punishment, it's said, will be the final lesson in disobedience. You'll see her tomorrow. For now, all you can do is lie awake, staring at the smoke curling across the stars, wondering how much deeper this nightmare can go. You already know the answer. Just one more day, one more breath, one more punishment, and it will take everything. Morning does not break so much as crawl. The sky hangs heavy, like a soaked wool blanket pulled over the camp. Muffling sound and dampening light. No birds chirp. No soldiers yest. Even the horses seem to tread softer, as if they, too, sense the weight of what's coming. You're ordered to clean the central square, sweeping dust, laying carpets, placing benches, all while pretending not to notice the tall wooden platform being constructed in the center. It's not for speaking. It's for watching. The punishment today is not a private matter. It is a courtly display. They bring her out at noon, flanked by 12 guards in ceremonial garb. The queen, not by marriage anymore, not by blood, only by defiance. Her robes are purple, frayed at the hem. Her ankles are shackled. Her face, though lined by captivity, still carries that strange, untouchable quality. She doesn't look at anyone, doesn't blink, doesn't bow. You've never seen a prisoner move like a storm cloud. But she does. She doesn't walk. She arrives. Her crime is read aloud in 3 languages: Mongolian, Persian, and Chinese. Treason, sorcery, arrogance. Each word lands like a drumbeat. But she doesn't flinch. A hush follows. Then, a word is spoken by the royal judge, the brazen bull. The crowd exhales sharply. You feel your spine tense. You've heard of it in stories, an ancient Greek invention, resurrected here with Mongol refinements. It's a hollow statue of a bull, forged from brass, polished until it gleams. A door opens in its side. She is stripped, wrists bound behind her back, and led forward. Still, no struggle. Not even when she sees the inside lined with spikes. Not even when the door shuts. The fire is lit beneath the bull. It starts slow. The belly warms first. The spikes heat. Inside. She screams, but the sound is diverted through pipes shaped like nostrils, transforming it into a grotesque snorting. So the bull appears alive, angry, breathing fire. The soldiers murmur prayers. The generals sip kumis. The fire grows. This punishment was never a Mongol invention. Historians trace its origin to Perillos of Athens, who built the first brazen bull for Phalaris of Sicily, only to be thrown into it himself. So how did it arrive here? In the steppes, no one agrees. Some say a Persian engineer recreated it as tribute to the Khan. Others believe it was taken from a conquered palace and made into a centerpiece of imperial justice. But one thing is certain, the Mongols embraced it. Not for its heritage, but for its spectacle. Her cries last longer than anyone expects. Nearly an hour. Long enough for the guards to rotate the bull so all sides can receive heat evenly. Long enough for the gold plating to discolor. Long enough for the camp to fall into that horrible quiet again. When it's over, the door is opened. The body within is blackened, fused in places with metal. Still, somehow, dignified. They do not bury her. They leave the bull standing. A new monument. Its flared nostrils still faintly steaming. A warning in the shape of an animal. You're ordered to clean the platform. Again. The same boards. The same rugs. But you move slower now. Unsure what it even means to prepare for something anymore. Every punishment here feels final until the next one. By afternoon, another prisoner is dragged in. A young boy, barely 15, caught drawing a satirical image of the Khan's general. A cartoon, etched in charcoal on a goat hide, showing the general tripping over his own sword. It made the soldiers laugh, until someone reported it. Now the boy is to be punished. He isn't lashed. He isn't branded. Instead, his fingertips are removed, one by one, carefully, so he may never draw again. His left hand is broken across a flat stone, his thumb crushed beneath a mallet. Then he is forced to eat the goat hide. When he gags, they rub ash on his face and call him the Joke. That will be his name now. The Joke. This punishment is not recorded in any official chronicle. It lives in the margins, in the folk tales told by nomads to scare their sons into silence. Yet the lesson is clear in the Mongol Empire. Even laughter can kill. Words have weight. So do drawings. By sunset, the wind has changed. It blows from the west, warm and dry. The fire pits are stoked for another round of punishment games. But this time, the contestants are not spies. They're soldiers. Two men accused of fighting over a woman violating the Khan's strict code on discipline in camp. They are not executed. They are made to fight with glass-tipped whips. The first to fall loses an ear. The second, his rank. They circle each other, bleeding, snarling, each lash drawing lines across arms and cheeks. The crowd roars. Bets are placed. Someone hands you a skin of sour wine and tells you to drink. You sip. It tastes like regret. The man who loses the fight is not killed. He is shaved bald. His uniform burned in front of him, and he is forced to carry the general's saddle for a year. On foot, across every campaign, His new title, Horse's Shadow. A walking punishment. The other man is allowed to return to his unit, but he will always be marked by the crosshatch scars on his face. A reminder that even victory comes at a cost. That night, the fires burn low. The sky is mercifully starless. You sit alone, staring at the bronze bull's silhouette, still faintly gleaming in the dark, and somewhere behind you, a new prisoner arrives. You hear chains, and weeping, and the unmistakable clink of coins heavy. Deliberate. Tomorrow, they say, is for the tax collector. The tax collector doesn't look like much when you first see him. He's short, soft, with delicate fingers that have clearly spent more time counting coins than gripping reins or drawing bows. His robes are fine, but wrinkled. His belt sagging under the weight of a pouch that jingles with silver tails. He doesn't plead, doesn't protest. He just stands there, blinking rapidly, as though trying to understand how a profession built on numbers and ink has landed him in front of a punishment platform surrounded by men who wear skulls as trophies. His crime, skimming, taking 1 coin out of every 10 delivered from conquered provinces. It was clever, almost undetectable, but cleverness in the Mongol Empire isn't rewarded when it challenges authority, especially when it cheats the Khan's treasury, and so they assign him to the Silver Veil. It starts innocuously wide. The flat plate of iron is heated over coals until it glows orange. Melted silver is poured onto the plate and stirred until it becomes smooth and glossy. This silver is no longer valuable. It's ceremonial now. A sentence turned molten. The tax collector is bound in place, standing upright, chin forced high with a hooked staff. And then they begin the pouring. Not over his body, over his face. Small ladles at first. Across the cheeks, the eyelids, the bridge of the nose. The silver runs like tears, leaving behind burns that glisten and peel. But the pièce de résistance is the final pour into the open mouth. He screams once, then chokes, and then silence. This punishment isn't unique to the Mongols. The Parthians, Persians, and even the Byzantines are rumored to have practiced similar methods, but the Mongols gave it a name. They called it the veil, because the victim's face, once recognizable, becomes hidden beneath a shimmering mask of disfigurement. Death is almost certain, but occasionally someone survives. Forever marked, a living coin, a cursed currency. After the body is dragged away, you're assigned to help clean the silver tray. The smell clings to your hands even after scrubbing them with ashes. That night, you don't eat. Not because you're afraid, because your stomach rebels against the very concept of swallowing. But the day isn't over. A caravan has arrived bearing 2 Chinese alchemists, prisoners of war from the last siege. Their crime isn't betrayal or theft, it's knowledge. Specifically, knowledge of substances the Mongols don't yet control. One of them, a younger man with a clipped beard, is said to have tried poisoning a well using crushed minerals. The other is older, his eyes yellowed with age, but sharp as obsidian. They are both sentenced to flesh experimentation. This is not a punishment so much as a test. They are tied to adjacent stakes, stripped, and doused with mixtures they themselves created acids, burning salts, oils distilled from wild herbs. Each substance is labeled and recorded by scribes. The goal is not to torture, it's to learn. But torture is what happens. As the chemicals eat into their skin, blistering and cracking it like dried mud. The men begin to talk not to beg, but to describe the sensations. Burning. One murmurs, but not deep. The other feels like insects beneath the skin. They're not treated as criminals. They're data. And when they finally collapse, charred and useless, their remains are scraped into a clay urn and labeled like failed medicine. This kind of punishment, scientific, impersonal, didn't originate with the Mongols. But they adopted it from Chinese warlords who saw value in pain's informational yield. It exists in no law book, but echoes through the notes of physicians and generals alike. Historians still debate whether the empire truly allowed such horrors, or whether they were rogue acts performed under unofficial sanction. You don't debate. You just carry the urn. The next morning is oddly bright. The skies are clear. The wind brisk. But the camp is quiet, as though the previous day's shadows have left stains that no sunrise can wash away. A new punishment is whispered across the tents, one rarely seen. Known only by a name, the mirror box. The victim is a translator, accused of giving false information to protect his native city. Because of his mistake, a Mongol raiding party was ambushed, and 4 men died. For this, he is placed inside a wooden box, lined with polished copper sheets. The box is just large enough to stand in, barely wide enough to move. The interior is lit by narrow slits that allow sunlight to reflect endlessly across the mirrors, bouncing his own image back at him from every angle. At first, this sounds merciful. No blade, no fire, no whips. But then they close the lid, leave him there. For days, no sound, no food, just his own reflection. Naked, shrinking, hallucinating. Some say victims begin to speak to their images. Others report they start believing they are being watched by demons. Whether you believe in spirits or not, something happens inside that box. When they open it 5 days later, he doesn't scream or cry. He just stands, expressionless, unable to speak, eyes darting as if still seeing something behind the air. He is kept alive, but only just. A living warning about the weight of mistranslation. This punishment, recorded in scattered Persian texts, is sometimes dismissed as legend, a poetic device symbolizing guilt. But you saw the box. You saw the man after. If it's poetry, it was written in madness. That afternoon, you're sent to a different part of the camp, the stables, not to tend horses, but to assist with a hoof branding. This one's for a merchant who sold counterfeit saddle gear to a Mongol cavalry unit. His punishment is literal. He will carry the mark of the horse he betrayed. A red-hot horseshoe is pressed against his back, then his chest, then one thigh. The shape is unmistakable. Crescent arcs burned into the flesh. But the final act is worse. His tongue is not cut out, nor pierced, but branded with a miniature iron sigil, heated until it glows yellow. As it touches the tongue, he flails, body convulsing, breath hissing through clenched teeth. He will never speak clearly again. The pain is permanent, the disfigurement precise. Later, you're told he'll be forced to live as a groom, sleeping beside the very horses he deceived. That's his new identity, stable trash. He'll live, but every word he utters will hiss through damaged tissue. Every glance at a horse will remind him of who he's become. You retreat to your tent that night without speaking, not because your mouth is damaged, but because your words feel like a luxury you no longer deserve. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what punishment would be devised for a witness, for someone who did nothing, said nothing, but watched. And still, beneath the muffled quiet of midnight, you hear it again, that humming, from somewhere outside the firelight, distant and familiar, like the drone of the earth, remembering every scream it ever swallowed. You rise before the stars have fully faded, breath fogging in the chill air, joints stiff from another night, curled on hide-wrapped straw. Your hands stink of ash and bile, but you don't bother washing them anymore. What would be the point? The stench always returns, and today, it's stronger. The camp has shifted literally. Tents have been rearranged, and a long trench is being dug across the northern edge. Not for water, not for waste. This is something ceremonial, something that requires space. You're sent to fetch torches and fresh kindling. No one tells you why, but as the morning sun stretches long shadows across the camp, you hear the guards muttering a name, the 100 Cuts. You try not to react, but your stomach clenches. You've heard stories, old ones, about a punishment reserved for those who committed crimes so layered, so contemptible, that no single wound would suffice. The man they drag to the trench is tall, muscular, unbroken, or at least, he was. He is accused of many things: impersonating a Mongol officer, stealing from tribute trains, lying under oath, and, worst of all, forging a royal decree in the Khan's name. His crimes are read aloud slowly, like an epic poem written in blood. When it's over, the guards waste no time. They strip him, tie his arms behind a thick wooden pole, and make the first cut across his chest. It's small, no deeper than the width of a fingernail. But then comes the second, and the third, and the 30th. The slices are careful, deliberate, meant to sting and bleed, but not kill. By the time they reach 50, the man's body is a canvas of crimson lines, his flesh trembling, eyes wide, but unfocused. No screams, only gasps. Then, the 60th cut is made across his lips, the 75th just beneath the ribs, the 99th across the palm, and the last, number 100, straight through the heart. Not deep, just final. You help collect the blood-soaked sand afterward, which will be used, you're told, to mark the threshold of the new officer's tent, a reminder of what happens when someone wears power they haven't earned. The 100 Cuts is often debated by scholars. Some claim it is myth, a metaphor for slow justice. Others assert it was very real, passed down from Central Asian rituals, meant to bleed away dishonor. Slice by slice, regardless of its origin, it is rare. It is saved for those whose crimes touch the divine. The man's body is not buried. It is wrapped in a carpet and burned alone at the edge of camp, as if even the worms are unworthy of him. That evening, a different punishment take place. Quieter, yet more chilling. A woman is brought forward, not a thief or spy, but a healer, a midwife, accused of performing secret abortions for the daughters of noblemen, preserving their purity while hiding the truth. Her crime, they say, is interfering with fate. Her punishment vine draining. She is tied gently, almost respectfully, to a wooden chair. Her arms are extended. Her wrists and ankles are lanced with small cuts, and warm sandbags are placed beneath them to encourage bleeding. No blade finishes the job. No spear waits to strike. She simply bleeds. Slowly. Over hours. The idea, the executioner says, is to let the future pour out. You are ordered to replace the sandbags twice. Her eyes stay open nearly the entire time. She doesn't flinch. She doesn't cry. She just watches the earth turn red beneath her. They do not burn her afterward. They bury her beneath the medicinal herbs she once used. Roots tangling with bones. You don't know if it's cruelty or poetry. Maybe both. The next morning, a familiar voice shouts across camp. A merchant you saw weeks ago, now chained and muddy. He's been found guilty of tricking Mongol soldiers into buying fake remedies, ground chalk disguised as opium. His punishment is one you've only heard about in mockery, the empty bowl. At first glance, it seems harmless. He is given a bowl and told he may leave once he fills it with his own spit. The guards laugh as they explain no water, no food, only the bowl and his mouth. It takes longer than you'd think. Hours pass. His lips crack. His throat dries. He kneels, shaking, trying to work up moisture from a mouth turned to dust. By nightfall, the bowl is still barely wet. By dawn, he's collapsed beside it. Lips swollen, tongue bitten through from the effort. They leave him there. Bowl, unfilled. That's the real punishment, not death. But denial. The promise of release always. One swallow away. This method is not recorded in any formal annals. But folk memory keeps it alive. Some say it began as a joke, a punishment for lazy servants. Others say it was used in desert camps, where water was precious, and failure to hydrate was a sentence in itself. What matters now is the result. The merchant never speaks again. His voice lost somewhere in the dryness. That same day, a punishment takes place that makes every other one feel like rehearsal. A man accused of poisoning a sacred spring is brought forward. Bound, not with rope, but with human hair-braided strands collected from the heads of mourning widows. The symbolism is clear. He has polluted what was pure. Now he will carry that impurity with him to the grave. His punishment is mud burial. A shallow pit is filled with wet, heavy mud, sticky, suffocating, unforgiving. He is placed inside, upright, arms to his sides. The mud is poured in slowly as the court chants prayers. At first, it rises to his ankles, then knees, then hips. By the time it reaches his chest, his breathing has grown shallow, frantique. The final pour is done with a kind of reverence, not cruelty ritual. As the last bucket drowns his mouth, the chanting stops. The surface is smoothed flat with wooden paddles. Grass is strewn across it. This punishment is rare, used only when sacred elements are violated. Historians are divided on whether it existed in the form described, or if it evolved over generations of oral exaggeration. But archaeological digs have revealed buried figures encased in hardened clay near ancient springs. You've now seen it firsthand. And it's not a story, it's a lesson. At night, the camp is unusually calm. Even the dogs seem subdued. You sit by the fire, chewing tough mutton, watching embers drift skyward. Someone hums. Always. Someone hums. This time, it's a soldier carving shapes into the dirt with a stick. He says nothing, just draws the outline of a face. Then he flicks it away. You ask him what the shape meant. He shrugs. The one who sang while dying. He mutters, then walks off. You sit there longer than you should, staring into the coals, wondering what your outline would look like. Should your turn come? A bowl, a mirror, a horned bronze bull. You tell yourself to stop thinking this way. But here in the Mongol Empire, punishment is prophecy, and every day feels like a countdown you can't read. The morning sun brings a false peace, gilding the horizon in warm gold. But everyone in the camp knows better. Today is a public reckoning, a punishment so symbolic that the entire structure of the day is rearranged around it. Breakfast is postponed. Horses are kept tethered. Children are ordered indoors. You're told to help set up a large stone ring in the center of camp, polished and cool, with rust-colored streaks from past use. You already know what this is: the spoke circle, where the condemned are tied like wheel hubs and stretched outward toward sharpened stakes like the ends of a wagon wheel. A human sunburst. The man they bring forth is a former commander, not enemy, not outsider, one of their own. He is accused of forging orders during a campaign in Anatolia, a lie that led to the loss of 30 riders and an entire shipment of gold. For this, he must become the center of something new. He is bound to the stone ring at his waist. Arms pulled forward, legs stretched back, each limb fastened to a separate stake with rope soaked in brine to tighten as it dries. Around him, scribes sit with scrolls, recording every shift of the ropes as the sun rises and the tension grows. This punishment is slow, vicious, and deeply Mongol. The image of a man stretched into geometry is one of cosmic justice disorder being rearranged into a form that pleases the world again. He doesn't scream at first. He's a soldier, used to pain, but as the sun climbs, the heat bakes the stone beneath him, and the cords bite deeper. By midday, his joints are visibly dislocated, skin stretched to translucence. They say no one ever survives past the 3rd hour, once the ropes start to shrink. He makes it to hour 5. When it ends, no blade is drawn. The cords do the work, tightening until the hips separate. The shoulders fall back unnaturally, and the skin at his chest splits like overripe fruit. His body is left in place until nightfall, then cremated without honors. No one speaks his name again. To do so would invite chaos. That same day, a thief is brought forward. His crime: stealing sacred relics from a burned-out monastery. Not for food, not for survival, for greed. His punishment is an old one, borrowed from Turkic tribes and adapted by the Mongols with brutal clarity: the sand mask. A leather hood is fastened over his head, its interior packed with fine dust grit, so dry and soft it moves like smoke. The mouth hole is stitched shut. Only the nostrils remain open, and he is left to breathe. Slowly, inhales fill the lungs with tiny blades. The dust scrapes the throat, abrades the soft tissue of the sinuses. Breathing becomes a punishment in itself. You're told it takes hours to reach the point where blood replaces air. No bones are broken, no skin is flayed, but the suffering is complete. When the hood is finally removed, his face is a ruin swollen, cracked, almost featureless. He survives for a time, wheezing, blind, coughing red. Then he stops. Historians rarely discuss the sand mask. Most believe it was too cruel to be real, perhaps an invention of travelers trying to impress their home courts with tales of exotic barbarism. But among steppe warriors, the method is whispered as fact. You've seen it now. It's not exotic. It's precise. Later, a group of prisoners is marched into camp. Heads shaved, backs tattooed with their crimes in ink, so dark it gleams. Each has the same punishment, the oath reversal. It begins with a recitation. They are forced to repeat the oaths they broke, loyalty vows, trading agreements, marriage pledges, but backward, not metaphorically, word for word. In reverse, missteps are punished with lashes. Mistakes mean restarting. One man stutters on his wife's name and is struck until his teeth loosen. Another fumbles the word for brotherhood and is made to bite off the tip of his own finger. Once the recitations are complete, their tongues are pricked with bone needles, the taste of blood becoming part of their penance. They are then paraded through the camp, each required to beg forgiveness from the youngest child present, as if reinitiating themselves into the social order through innocence. The Mongols took oaths seriously, swearing by eternal blue heaven, by ancestors, by the dust beneath their horses. To break such a vow wasn't merely dishonor. It was spiritual rupture. The oath reversal is rarely written about in formal records, but oral traditions carry its echoes. You see it now, in the trembling hands of the condemned, in the red splotches on their tongues, in the way they kneel before toddlers, too young to understand what forgiveness means. As dusk approaches, you are called again, this time to a wooden funnel. A guard carries a goatskin pouch filled with a black, tar-like liquid. The condemned is a herdsman who sold diseased livestock to a Mongol cavalry unit, resulting in a plague that felled horses across 2 provinces. His punishment is the gut flood. He is strapped to a chair, jaws forced open with a wedge, and the thick liquid is poured slowly through the funnel into his throat. It's not poison yet. It's a mixture of old lard, crushed bone, sewer milk, and ashes. The body can't digest it. It blocks the intestines, ruptures the stomach lining, and inflames the lungs. Death is not instant. He convulses for hours, belly distended, skin turning blotchy. By the time he dies, the liquid is bubbling out through his nose. They leave him there overnight. You are told to keep the flies away. You don't. You just sit and hum. That same tuneless hum you've heard for weeks now. That night, the camp hosts a feast, not in celebration, but in purification, a ritual to cleanse the air of the past day's sins. Meat is roasted, milk is shared, incense burned, and in the middle of it all, a singer steps forward, young, barefoot, cloaked in white. She sings a song you recognize, though you don't know how. It's the hum, turned into melody, turned into story, turned into warning, and you realize then, with a jolt, that the hum isn't just noise. It's the memory of punishment passed mouth to mouth, generation to generation, passed by those who saw, who survived, who sang because screaming was no longer useful. You close your eyes, letting the sound wash over you. It's beautiful and awful, just like everything else here. The next dawn arrives not with screams but with silence, so absolute it feels like the sky itself is holding its breath. You wake to the sound of distant hooves thudding in rhythm, a slow march that vibrates the earth under your sleeping mat. When you step outside your tent, the camp is already assembled. Rows of warriors kneel in neat lines, heads bowed. At the center, on a raised wooden platform, sits a new object, tall, narrow, carved from ironwood, and bound in bands of black steel, it resembles a cage. But tighter, more confined. You already know what it is. The tower coffin. A man is dragged forward, chained at the wrists and ankles. He is accused of delivering false weather reports to the Khan's scouts, causing an entire winter campaign to stall in the mountain passes. Hundreds died in the cold, and for this he will be encased. Not killed. Not right away. The tower coffin is built for agony measured in days. He is stripped, oiled, so the metal doesn't tear his flesh on the way in, and then forced into the narrow cylinder feet first. His arms are folded against his chest. His chin is pressed down. He barely fits. Once inside, the ironwood door slams shut, bolted with a long bronze pin. Then they tip the tower upright, position it on a wheeled cart, and roll it to the edge of camp. There, it stays for 5 days. Each morning, guards feed him through a straw, not out of mercy. To prolong it, his own waste pools at his feet. His skin begins to blister from the cold of night and bake from the sun by midday. He can't move, can't sleep, can't stretch. The sounds he makes stop being human after the second sunset. On the 5th day, the cart returns. They unbolt the tower. He slumps out, dead, or nearly dead. They do not check. He is buried upright, still folded. The tower is cleaned and left waiting for its next occupant. Historians still argue about the tower coffin. Some claim it was myth, a fabrication by terrified Europeans. Others point to fragments of similar devices found in Central Asian ruins, crates barely wider than a man's shoulders, stained with rot and rust. Whatever the case, its purpose is clear: to make a person vanish while still alive. It is both punishment and erasure. You barely get a breath before the next punishment begins. A girl, no older than 16, is brought forward. She was caught stealing from the officer's supply tent salted meat, dried fruit, a wool blanket. Her crime is minor. Her punishment is not. This is where you first witness the needle path. Along the camp's main thoroughfare, a series of narrow poles has been driven into the dirt, atop each. A bone needle stands upright, points sharpened like thorns. She is ordered to walk the path barefoot, slowly, 1 step per drumbeat. Each footfall sinks the skin a little deeper. By the 3rd step, blood blossoms around her toes. By the 7th, she begins to cry. By the 12th, she stumbles, landing hard, knees sinking onto the thorns. The crowd is silent. There is no jeering. This punishment is not for mockery. It is for education. The Mongols believed in pain with meaning. The needle path was a lesson about theft. Yes, but also about honor. To survive it is to prove resilience. To fall is to be marked. If she finishes, she is allowed to stay. If she quits, she is cast out. She finishes, barely, limping, face streaked with blood and dust, feet so swollen she cannot stand. They give her water, not praise. Later that evening, you're asked to assist with a different kind of task. A man has confessed to a crime no one expected: prophecy. He claimed to see visions of the Khan's death. He drew them in charcoal on the inside of his tent. A white horse, a river of fire, a broken sword. He whispered these visions to others, warning them to flee. He's dragged before the camp's court, where the shamans debate his fate. And what they choose is unusual. The dream burial. It's not execution. Not exactly. He's tied to a wooden pallet and covered in a thick wool blanket soaked in fermented milk. Then he is buried face up, eyes open in a shallow pit. Only his mouth is left exposed. A reed is placed between his lips, barely thicker than a finger. Through it, he will breathe. For a while, the soil is patted down. A small yurt is erected over the site. Inside, a single candle burns. No one enters. No one speaks of it. For 3 days, people walk by and pretend not to hear the muffled breathing beneath the earth. Then the candle is snuffed, the yurt taken down, the pit never reopened. Scholars argue whether the dream burial was symbolic more metaphor than method. But on the steppe, stories live longer than bodies, and the ground beneath your feet remembers. That night, the guards drink in silence. No laughter, no dicha games, just low murmurs and flickers of shadow against yurt walls. One man tells you of a punishment he once saw far to the west, the glass road. A prisoner forced to crawl across a path strewn with crushed crystal, naked and blindfolded, until he reached a bowl of water. If he drank before arriving, his tongue was cut out. If he made it and drank too fast, his throat was slit. The key was control. The test was endurance. The man, he said, made it. But by then, his knees had worn to the bone. You ask if this really happened. He shrugs. Does it matter? He replies. The point is, we all crawl, eventually. As you return to your tent, you step past the tower coffin. Its walls still streaked with grime. You hear nothing from inside, but you find yourself slowing anyway, listening, and beneath that so faint, you could almost deny it, you hear it. That same hum, again. And now you know why it never stops. It's not just a song. It's the rhythm of the punishment itself. At this point, you no longer count the days. You count the punishments. Each one is a marker in the dust, a shift in the wind, a sound that echoes in your ears even after sleep pulls you under. Today begins with the sound of metal being unrolled long sheets of beaten bronze, polished until they gleam like mirrors under the rising sun. These are not shields, not coins. They are components of what the Mongols call the echo gate. You're summoned early to assist in assembling it. The structure is simple, a tall metal arch with a narrow slit through its center. Positioned at the edge of camp where the hills begin, a Prisna stands nearby. Trembling, he is a captured mapmaker once employed by a Persian sultan, now accused of deliberately mischarting river crossings to slow the Mongol advance. Several supply carts were lost in floods because of his alterations. His punishment is the wind passage. He is stripped and greased with goat tallow. Then, he is blindfolded, bound at the ankles, and ordered to run through the slit in the bronze gate as the wind whistles down from the hills. Sample nut kite. The slit is lined with razor-thin blades, cooled overnight in brine and spaced just wide enough for a man to pass if he does not stumble. The blindfold makes it nearly impossible to stay centered. The prisoner is pushed forward. He hesitates. Another push. He runs. He makes it 3 steps before he veers left. A scream follows. Short and sharp. He emerges on the other side, staggering. His ribs cut deep. His shoulder dangling by skin. He collapses within seconds. Blood slicks the bronze arch. The gate now glistens in red and gold. a warning, and a spectacle. This punishment is little known outside the Mongol sphere. Some believe it originated from Chinese death gates used in royal courts. Others suspect it was invented by Genghis's own engineers to combine symbolism with spectacle. Either way, the lesson is clear. False directions are punished with paths lined by death. As the day warms, a new group of prisoners is marched into camp. Among them is a forger, a man caught carving false Mongol seals and selling fake letters of passage. He is young, clever, and, unfortunately, persuasive. He sold a fake travel writ to a Turkish merchant, who was later executed for crossing into restricted territory. The forger's punishment is the ink pool. You help dig the basin shallow and wide. Lined with stone, black dye is mixed with animal glue and thickened into a viscous sludge. It's not poisonous. That's not the point. The man is shackled and submerged to the neck in the ink. He is left there under the sun. His body temperature rises. He begins to sweat. The ink absorbs into his skin. After a few hours, his skin turns black. After a full day, his eyes swell shut. He is kept there for 3 more. By the time he is pulled out, he is unrecognizable. Not because of pain, because his body is a symbol now, a false seal turned flesh. They give him no new name. He is called Markless. He is released into the nearest city to wander, to speak of what happened, to be stared at, a living letter of warning. Scholars debate this punishment endlessly. Was the ink pool symbolic, an isolated incident, a metaphor for the stain of lies? But you were there. You stirred the pot. You held the ladle. You saw the black run from his ears when he tried to speak. That night, as you collapse into sleep, you're jolted awake by the sound of weeping. Not the usual cries of the punished, but something different, choked, rhythmic. You crawl from your tent and follow it to the fire pit, where a man is being held over the flames, not by force, but by rope. His wrists are bound behind him, and a chain is looped under his arms, pulling him upward just enough so that only his toes touch the fire. They call this the prayer stand, a punishment reserved for liars who claimed visions from the eternal blue sky, false prophets, dream charlatans, seers who dared to predict the end of the empire. The idea is simple. The man must hold himself aloft, relying on his strength to keep from lowering onto the coals. But strength fails. It always does. Every hour he dips. He burns a little more. The pain increases. The choice remains rise or roast. You watch him struggle all night, up and down, blistered and shaking. His prayers turn to animal whimpers. When the sun rises, the chain is released, and his body crumples to the ground like wax scraped from a candle. He is buried in silence. No one speaks his name. No one records his false prophecy. The next afternoon, a woman is brought in. Her crime, teaching girls to write. Not forbidden, but frowned upon in the provinces where resistance still lingers. Her punishment is strangely delicate. They call it the thread sentence. She is seated on a platform and handed a needle. Her task, to stitch a full verse from the Khan's law code into her own robe, using her hair as thread, a single strand at a time. The guards sit nearby, watching. She is allowed water. Nothing more. The stitching takes days. Her hair thins. Her fingers blister. The verse is long and requires perfection. A crooked letter earns a beating. A missed stitch means starting over. When she finishes, she is blindfolded, put in place, and forced to wear the robe backward for the remainder of her life. This punishment, rare even among the Mongols, was used when retribution was deemed too simple, when the offender had to live in a loop of their own rebellion. Oral histories speak of women in remote towns still wearing these robes decades later, their backs covered in faded law, their eyes lowered in forced humility. You help her down from the platform. She says nothing. She only hums. The same hum, over and over. It's joined by others, rippling through the tents like smoke. You know by now that the hum never comes from one place. It's collective. It rises whenever something lingers too long. Pain, memory, punishment. Tonight, the sky is thick with it. You don't try to sleep. You just listen. The rain comes during the night, sudden and hard, flattening tents and soaking through furs. You lie in the dark, curled like a question mark, listening to water drip from the yurt's seams. It doesn't clean the camp. It makes the stench rise: old blood, scorched fat, damp wool, all released from the ground like ghosts. At dawn, no one moves quickly. Firewood is wet. Boots are caked in sludge. But the punishments still proceed. They always do. This morning's case is simple insubordination. A captain who refused to ride into a storm to deliver a message. His punishment is old, traditional. The Mongols call it the saddle bind. His legs are bent beneath him, tied so tight they bruise blue within minutes. His arms are crossed and lashed to his sides. Then, the saddle, not on a horse on him, a wooden Mongol saddle, is strapped to his back. Girth cinched, horn pressing into his spine. It is symbolic and literal. He now bears the saddle he refused to ride. Then, weight is added: stones, a helmet, a sack of grain. He is left kneeling in the mud while officers walk past and use him like a post. Some lean against him. One hangs her bow across the saddle horn. He toppled twice. Each time, the bindings are tightened. By midday, he can no longer speak. His eyes bulge from pressure. When he passes out, they do not unstrap the saddle. They just leave him in the rain. He survives the day. Barely. He is later seen crawling to the fire pits, the saddle still creaking with every movement. They say he wore it for 9 days before infection set in. That same afternoon, a different crime. A man caught tampering with weights at a military storehouse. He added stones to grain bags, deceived soldiers, skimmed provisions. His punishment is not loud, but it lasts. It is called the scales. A beam is hung between 2 stakes. At one end, a stone, equal to the weight he stole. At the other, his own body. He is suspended by the wrists, the weight dragging him sideways. He is told to remain still or risk dislocating both arms. When his muscles begin to shake, they add a coin to the other side. Then another, then another. The imbalance worsens. The scales dip. And slowly, his shoulders begin to separate. The punishment lasts 3 hours. When it ends, he cannot raise his arms. He is not executed. He is sent to work in the kitchens, where he will serve the soldiers he once starved. Wordless, bent, arms dangling like broken flags. Historians disagree about the scales. Some describe it as a tool of justice from earlier Persian courts. Others believe the Mongols invented it as poetic recompense, one wait for another. Regardless, it becomes a story retold around fires. Don't let your measure tip. That night, the wind turns sharp. Snow begins to fall thin. Fast. Stinging. A fire is built in the center of camp, and an old man is brought forward. His name is not spoken. His charge hoarding knowledge. A court astrologer caught concealing an unfavorable prophecy, the Khan's death. Written in stars he dared not speak of. His punishment is not death. It is the unreading. A scroll is placed before him blank. He is told to recite its contents. When he cannot, a single letter is branded into his palm. He is handed a second scroll. Again, he cannot read what isn't there. Another brand. A third. A fourth. Each one earns a new glyph. Until both palms are covered in letters he did not write. Then, finally, they hand him the scroll he once hid. He is told to recite it. He does. Clearly. Perfectly. The punishment concludes with his mouth being sewn shut with horsehair 3 stitches, not to prevent speech, but to pause it indefinitely. He is assigned to the scribe's tent, where he will transcribe law without voice. Fingers stiff from burns. The Mongols feared false knowledge more than enemy blades. To speak wrongly of the sky was to challenge the divine. Some sources say this punishment was ceremonial, only metaphor turned flesh. But you saw the brands. You saw the thread in his lips. And later that week, you see a scroll he copies, smeared with blood from cracked knuckles. Toward the end of the week, a group of children is brought in not for punishment, but to witness. They are seated in a semicircle as a woman is marched forward. Her crime, teaching forbidden songs, ballads that mocked the empire. Stories where the Khan is cast not as a hero, but a fool. Her punishment is the echoing. She is gagged, then placed inside a dome made of curved wood and hide. The dome has a single hole. Through it, children take turns shouting lines from the songs she taught. Their voices bounce within. Distorted. Magnified. Her face contorts. She screams soundlessly beneath the gag. She writhes not from pain, but from the sound of her own treason, returning 100-fold. Afterward, she is released. Alive, but changed. This punishment is rare. Little is written of it. Some say it was a one-time invention of a particular governor. Others suggest it was used to humiliate women, mocking the very voice they used to pass on forbidden lore. You hear one child repeat a line later in the day, "The Khan fell off his horse, and the sky refused to catch him. The guard slaps him. Hard, but the line has already taken root. As the snow thickens, the punishment's slow. Not from mercy, but logistics. The body freezes faster now. Screams are muffled by wind. Still, one last man is brought forward. He is accused of pretending to be mute to avoid conscription. His punishment is swift, the voice tear. A heated cord is drawn across his throat. Not to cut, but to scorch. He is then made to speak. Every word is agony. Every syllable blood-stained. They force him to sing. He cannot. He tries. He gurgles. They assign him to night. Watch's job now is to alert others of danger. Without the ability to speak above a rasp, you pass him one evening, hunched near the fire, mouthing words into his hands, rocking back and forth to stay warm. His hum is silent, but you recognize it. You nod. He nods back. That night, you hear Dotson's humming, not in pain. In memory, the snow doesn't stop. It blankets the steppe in thick white silence, coating the tents, the carts, even the grave mounds that rise like ribs from the frozen earth. By now, the punishments no longer shock you. They move like breath through the camp, steady, rhythmic, expected. But today, there's a shift. Something colder than the weather. Something ceremonial. They're building something huge in the center field, a ring of ice blocks, each carved with glyphs you can't decipher. At the middle is a low stone platform, coated in frost. No one speaks, but everyone gathers. You're told only this: the punishment is for betrayal, the highest kind. A commander who plotted to break from the Khan's army and ride south with his own banner. They call what's about to happen the Frost Throne. And you are told to keep the firewood far away. The man is brought in barefoot, dressed in ceremonial robes, soaked in water. As he walks, they freeze to his skin. Each step tears the fabric away from his calves. He does not flinch. He was once a leader. Now, he is made to kneel on the stone block, while buckets of ice are poured over his head. Not snow, not water. Shaved ice fine. Sharp. Meant to cling. Layer after layer piles atop him, forming a shape. Slowly, it molds into the outline of a chair, encasing his back, his arms, his legs. When it reaches his shoulders, they place an ice crown on his head. It freezes to his hair instantly. He does not beg. He does not move. They say this is the point to remain still, to freeze with dignity, to become the throne he tried to seize. By nightfall, he is entirely encased, a glistening statue with blue lips and open eyes. They leave him there for 3 days, until the sun melts the ice and the throne collapses in a wet hush. No one speaks his name, not even you. Some historians believe the Frost Throne was a ritual act of political theater reserved only for the highest traitors, a kind of cold coronation in reverse. Others insist it never happened, citing lack of records. But you remember the shape of his mouth as the ice crept up his chest. It was half open, not in fear, but as if singing something only he could hear. That night, the hum is different, slower, resigned, and it carries into the next punishment, one you'd hoped never to witness. The horse split. A pair of stallions is tied nose to nose. Between them, a criminal is suspended by leather straps at the arms and ankles. The horses are whipped. They surge in opposite directions. If you're lucky, you're watching from far away. You aren't lucky. You're holding the reins. The man tied between them had murdered his own kin and fled across 3 provinces before being captured. For crimes of blood, the Mongols reserved blooded ends. When the horses pull, you hear the scream echo through the valley like a trumpet. It's short. The tearing is not. Some say the horse split never happened, that it was merely invented by terrified travelers, writing horror tales for curious kings. But the straps are real. The horses are real. And your palms are still raw from the reins. Afterward, the animals are calmed, fed apples, and stroked like heroes. You're told they don't remember what they did. Only you do. The camp is quieter after that. People avoid eye contact. Laughter is rare. Even the guards move slower. The next punishment is whispered, the threaded eye. A man who spied for the enemy is caught passing messages using knots sewn into his cloak. They respond with equal precision. He is held down. A sliver of thread is dipped in salt and drawn through a needle. Then, beginning at the corner of his left eye, the thread is passed through the skin, just the outer layer, over and over, until the entire orbit is laced shut like a boot. The right eye is left open. To watch, to weep, to remember. They call this half-blindness. A fitting end for someone who only saw half the truth. This punishment isn't recorded in official law codes. It exists in the realm of memory, too petty for scrolls, too vivid to vanish. You help the man drink that evening, since he cannot wipe his face. When he finishes, he simply says, "I saw the wrong thing." Later, a boy is punished, not harshly, but publicly. He disobeyed a direct order to clean blood from a yurt pole. His punishment is to sit in silence beside the frost-melt puddle for an entire night, naked from the waist up. By morning, his skin is goose-pimpled, lips purple, but he's still upright. It's minor, it's survivable, but the message is clear. Even small rebellions are recorded. That afternoon, the last sentence of the week is carried out. A woman, accused of falsifying burial rites, claiming a warrior's ashes were returned to the steppe when they had been sold to a collector in Samarkand. Her punishment is to carry the urn, not the real one, but a replica filled with ash from the hearth around her neck for the rest of the year. Every time she enters camp, the urn rattles. Every time she bows, it swings forward and bumps her chest. She becomes the sound of guilt itself. You pass her weeks later in the market, and she nods. The urn is silent now, but you know better. And now, the punishments, slow, not because there are no more crimes, but because winter settles fully. Travel becomes impossible. The snow deepens. People keep to their tents. Fires burn longer. The humming does not stop, but it does soften. You find yourself sitting by the edge of the ridge, looking out across the ice-covered plains. And for the first time in weeks, you feel something like rest. Not peace. Just pause. The wind brushes your face, and it doesn't sting. The ghosts of screams still echo in your mind. But quieter now. You breathe. The world does not punish you for it. Now that we've reached the end of our journey, let your shoulders drop a little deeper into the pillow. Breathe slower. Let the cold winds of the steppe recede from your skin. The sounds of hooves and screams fade into distant memory. You've walked through the ice and fire of the Mongol Empire's darkest rituals. But here right now, there are no ropes or thrones or iron cages. Only warmth. Only stillness. Imagine a quiet plain stretching to the horizon. Snow untouched. Sky soft with stars. A camp long since abandoned. Its fires cold. Y voici. Feel the hush settle over your thoughts like a thick wool blanket. Even the humming that followed you low, haunting, has thinned to a whisper. That sound, once heavy with pain, now flickers softly in your ears. Not as punishment, but as memory, a lullaby from centuries ago. You don't have to carry these stories anymore. Let them drift away like smoke, curling into frost. Your hands are not bound. Your feet do not tread sharp needles. You lie still, safe, surrounded by gentle night. The world of the Khans has closed its gates, and you remain on the outside, watching the snow fall in silence, knowing you made it through. So breathe in one more time. Let your eyes get heavy. There's no more to witness. no more to fear. Just rest. Now, sleep. Sleep. Sweet dreams.